So welcome, everybody. My name is Sue Grinnell, and I'm with the Public Health Institute, and very excited for this discussion today on authentic youth engagement. A lot of folks are working with adults, and I think others are also working with youth. So just hearing from Lizzie Cooper and Amina Mohammed, I think will be great to hear kind of their journey and their experiences. They are both with the UC San Diego School of Medicine, Center for Community Health. And I think they're supporting a youth advisory council there and have much to offer in terms of their wisdom around this. So I'm going to turn it over to both of them. And I think because it's a small group, I mean, you know, Lizzie and Amina, like, you know, let people know how you want to do discussion. It might be good maybe to start with intros, just so you know who's on. Does that sound like that would work?
Yeah, so we've actually got it built into our presentation, so I think we are on the same page, Ms. Sue.
Very good, very good. Okay.
By calling? You mean there might be more people by calling, or is this?
Let's go ahead and start, just because, you know, just to honor the time. I think some people might join, and if they do, great, and if not, we're recording.
Okay. All right, fantastic. We have crafted a very hopefully engaging presentation today, so I think it'll actually be kind of nice that we have a smaller group so we can dive deep into some conversation. So thank you all for joining us today. My name is Lizzie Cooper, and I'm here with Amina. As you stated, we're at the UC San Diego Center for Community Health, and today we're just going to be going over some of the work we do here in San Diego, as well as kind of the best practices with authentic youth engagement work that both Amina and I have kind of gleaned and worked on in our many, many combined years of community and youth engagement work.
Yeah, our today's overview is going to be introduction, Youth Advisory Council, more about Youth Advisory Council, benefits of youth leadership, principle of community engagement, and we'll have time for questions and discussion. So, sorry you couldn't see me joining on the webinar, but here's, my name is Amina Sheikh Mohammed, and I have been around for a while, over 15 years, doing a community and youth engagement work. I've been with the university for over 9 years, and I'm really excited to be here today to share more about youth engagement. And one quote that I would love to read out is, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world, by Nelson Mandela.
Yes. Great, thank you. And my name is Lizzie Cooper, and I am the program manager here for the Youth Advisory Council. Unfortunately, my professional photos are a little outdated, so you can see me on the right with one of my youth at the American Public Health Association meeting last year. So I've been doing work with youth and with youth leadership since I was about 16 myself, so no one needs to do math on that, but let's say over a decade. And I've really had an opportunity to work with some really great communities across the U.S. on different food justice initiatives. So I'm really excited to be here with you all to learn some of the work that you're doing, as well as to share some best practices. And as you can see, the quote that I would like to put forth to the group today is, we all move forward when we recognize how resilient and striking the women around us are. It's nice that we only have females online, so I don't have to apologize to anyone for that quote.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, well, so can we do introductions by name, agency you're with, and also what does your work with youth look like, and how comfortable are you engaging youth in your work?
So since we have a small group, why don't we just go ahead. Christy, would you mind starting us off?
Sure. My name is Christy DeMaria. I work with River City Medical Group. We are a managed care medical group within Medi-Cal. We work with most of the health plans here in Sacramento, as well as some of the surrounding counties. I am working with the West Sacramento CASHI group, and we actually have just started engaging not only the community, but the youth as well in our outreach to address heart disease. And so there are a lot of different applications that we can use, but we're still at the beginning steps, so we haven't taken too many steps to actually engage yet, which is why I'm here to try to help guide the group in the right direction.
Nice.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah. And Vanessa?
My name is Vanessa Verdiak. I'm with the Humboldt Independent Practice Association. We started a student health center here in our rural town. It's in McKinleyville, California. It's at a middle school, and it's very unique. It's one of a kind. I oversee the student health center there, and we offer students healthcare services. We're also going to be going into the classroom and doing some puberty education and healthy relationships and other things. I feel pretty comfortable engaging youth, but I just always like to hear like different techniques and ideas from other people. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Thank you, Vanessa. I will also say that I have been to McKinleyville on numerous occasions. My best friend grew up there and went to the high school.
Oh my God, that's where I went to high school. That's awesome. Cool, small world.
Yeah. That's what are the chances?
Yeah, and for learning, we're still learning. You know, we've been working with youth for a long time. There's always room to improve, you know, with working with communities and youth. So, thank you.
Sue, did you want to introduce yourself too?
Sure. Just Sue Grinnell, Public Health Institute. And, you know, my work with youth right now, I'm not working directly in that space, but love to. I mean, I'm just not, you know, in any of the work that I'm doing. And I am comfortable, you know, I've done it before in the past, but just not doing it now. So.
Awesome.
And I thought I saw Rocio on from Napa, but now I'm not seeing her. So maybe she'll come back on.
Okay.
Anyway, okay.
All right, great. Well, don't you worry, there's still more fun engagement to come. So what I'm going to ask you guys to do, I think in order to set the stage properly for a discussion of youth-led work, I'm going to ask you guys to be a little cheesy and take a small step back into your past with me. So I want you to go ahead with me and visualize yourself at the age of 16. Maybe, let's say, halfway through the year. So not right on your birthday, not on a special occasion, but just on an average day in 16-year-old you's life. And I want you to take a moment and just kind of look at the questions up on the screen and consider your answers to them. So I'm going to give everyone about a minute to think through and to travel down memory lane there.
Here you go.
Welcome. Lizzie, I don't know if we have a new person joining. It looks like we just had one.
Hi there. Who did we have join the call?
I don't know if she's I'm turning it on.
Hi there. Did we have someone just join the call?
She does, but I don't know if she's, I'm not sure how to pronounce her name. It's Epriel. Is April from Long? She's trying to get on. Okay. Hi there. So she's getting on. It's April. Oh, lovely. Thanks. I would have never gotten that from that.
Hey, April. So we are just doing a quick little exercise where we're playing with what our 16-year-old self looks like based on the questions up on the screen. After we do that, we're going to ask you to introduce yourself too, but we'll get to that in a moment. So I think actually probably it is about a good time to regroup. So, I asked you all to consider the questions up on the screen. Did anything come up for anyone?
Yeah, I was, so I was homeless during my childhood, during this time. My mom always had a hard time owning a business and having a house at the same time. But she was also really progressive and a radical feminist, and raised me to be that way. So I was really interested in healthcare, sexual, reproductive healthcare. I would bring like literature to school just to piss my teachers off, and bring condoms to school and throw them all around and shake the pot, McKinley Bell. So yeah, I was engaged even in my difficult environment.
Got you. Thank you so much for sharing, Vanessa. Would anyone else like to share anything that came up for them?
It's funny, Vanessa, because I think I had the total opposite, right? I was in a private Christian high school. And it was like run by Nazarenes. And I was like, what am I doing here? Because I was always getting in trouble. But, I wasn't making the decisions. Like my parents put me in this school, and I had to wear, like I got in trouble one time because my skirt was too short. I'm looking at and so, yeah, it was an interesting time. So this is a great question to kind of go back in time and think about that. Like, what was that like?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like we got some troublemakers on the call. I like it.
Yeah.
Christy or April, would either of you like to share anything that came up?
Nothing too special about my childhood, but I do remember at 16 I didn't have very much control or input in any of the decision making that affected my life. So that kind of popped out to the top.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's when we do this discussion, that's something we hear pretty often, that the role of decision making in a youth's life is really dependent on so many different factors. So thank you for sharing that, Christy. April, are you online now? Can you hear us?
Hi, yeah, I was able to join over my phone, so I'm here now.
Great, thank you for joining us. April, maybe do you want to answer the question, but then also would you like to introduce yourself and the agency you're from?
Sure, I'm with the Long Beach Health Department. I work with the Tobacco Education Program, and we do have a kind of a youth group that we work with. So I haven't been on many of the calls, but I wanted to kind of catch this one since we do specifically work with youth. And I guess, what was this? We're in high school, 16, is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Let's see, such a long time ago. I just think in high school I was very kind of just concerned with school. I played soccer, and that was pretty much it. I didn't really do much else. I'm kind of an introvert, so I didn't really have a huge group of friends. I just had a couple of friends. And I was really kind of starting to get more interested in kind of politics and political science and community engagement, which is what I ended up majoring in, and it really kind of started in high school.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you so much for joining us today. So I asked you all to do that visualization, not only so I could hopefully get stories about, pink hair in high school, but really because I think for most of us adults working with youth, it's been a number of years since we were a youth ourselves, and since we really had to navigate what it's like to be in an adult-driven world where you're trying to articulate your needs and your perspectives and thoughts, when so often the voices of young people are taken in a position of less seriousness than for adults. So as we're moving through this presentation today and both sharing about our work as well as strategies, I'd really love you to kind of keep that mindset of some of the perspectives of young people and how oftentimes, similar to what Christy was saying, the decision-making practice and the role of the really decisive role in a youth life isn't encouraged or really put in their place.
Thank you. Yeah, so thanks, Lizzie. So as you heard, we are from UC San Diego Center for Community Health. We are under the school, UC San Diego School of Medicine and the Department of Pediatrics. Although our work is not specifically to pediatrics, we do a lot of work. Our mission is to transform health and wellness in diverse communities. As a university, we are based in City Heights. Even though we belong to the university, we are in the community, so our office is really walking distance within the community. City Heights is one of the most diverse cities in the country. So we have partners across from different ethnic backgrounds. And with that, we have different professionals, physicians, research evaluators, public health and community outreach educators, and so on. We have done a lot of community engagement and various other work within, like statewide within San Diego. So we're really excited today to share more specifically about our youth council. We've been existing for 30 years. The center has been existing for 30 years. So there's some learning there.
Yeah.
And with the Youth Advisory Council, with my work and also with my colleagues' work, many times we're in different settings. We're in faith-based schools, you name it, work site, so on, based on funding and whatnot, and also our interest. And for many times, doing community engagement, there was always something about youth being involved. And honestly, once they joined, I always felt like within the community engagement practices and programs that we had, there was always youth wanted to do more, but then there was not that space for them to do. And we kept, the program is almost like whatever initiative is almost over, and they have so many ideas. And we did take some ideas, but I feel like it was not included however they wanted. So what we came up with about 2015 is launching the Youth Advisory Council to really have a space for the youth to have their own initiatives. And Youth Advisory Council is highly motivated, hardworking, passionate young people that are very diverse and very, as you see in the photo, based on, the recruitment from this area. And did I do that?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So with the youth, we feel like it's been really successful program, and we get so many attentions, and the youth keep saying we don't even do much of recruitment. It's been very successful program for us once we did that, and we'll share more.
And as Amina said, we've been fortunate to have a successful program, and that's really because the Youth Advisory Council, or the Yak, as we'll probably call it for the rest of the presentation, is really comprised of the passion, the interest, and the talents of the youth that are involved. A lot of times we get that question of how do you find youth? How do you get youth engaged? Like, how do you get youth to come? And the answer is that they drive themselves because the program is youth-driven, but also because they have a genuine interest in improving their communities. So the vast majority of our youth come from a low socioeconomic background, and the majority of them have immigrant or refugee status themselves or come from families with that status. So we're talking about youth that don't just want to help and improve matters on a theoretic level, but really live in the communities where they see health disparities play out. So we're fortunate to be able to engage with the youth in a really meaningful way and to craft programs that build the youth capacity while also providing them a space to articulate their perspectives and to drive forward the change they want to see. And one example of this is the photo of the young man on the screen. As you can see, he has a business card that says activist. He made that himself. He's now a sophomore in college, but was actually engaged in our program for 3 years. And as you can see, his quote that he gave at a binational press conference on childhood obesity articulates really his message for his community. And it reads, "I'm not a number, I am Miguel. This is my community, this is my life, and I request investments in safe spaces in my community and in communities just like mine." And these are his words that he pressed forward and that he saw meaning in articulating to a larger audience. And to get a little more into the nitty-gritty of our program, and also just a quick caveat, all of the photos we use in the presentation have been taken in the last 2 to 3 years of our program, so they're all youth that are actually engaged in the program. So the Yak program consists of 3 main topics: community health initiatives, youth development activities, and the YPAR project. So community health initiatives really talk about a variety of different advocacy projects, as well as community nutrition projects and different efforts, as well as training and professionals. So actually some of our youth today are in the state of Louisiana because we are invited to lead an advocacy training for 600 high school students in central Louisiana so they could do some implementation of healthy programming. And our youth, we sent several of our alumni who've been doing the work for several years. Our youth have also partnered with the County of San Diego to do photo voice efforts, talking about the marketing of tobacco and especially the marketing of Juul products to youth, which obviously is high in the public health news this week. We also have done different initiatives such as the Rethink Your Drink campaign, partnering with local supermarkets. The youth development activities, because our youth are coming from a background where they might not have the same resources as some of their peers, or the same, shall I say, network to provide them with the resources for their peers, what we've intentionally done with our program is build in a lot of opportunities for them to develop both their leadership, but also to develop in terms of the next steps in their life and to really gear towards their future successes. So we do public health education, we do an annual leadership retreat, we have a lot of different public speaking opportunities where we get to have, really coach and work with them on how to craft an advocacy message, how to really articulate your points, as well as providing the youth with modest stipends for participation. It's our mentality that anytime youth are engaged in an initiative, and especially low-income youth and youth of color, they have a lot of opportunities to do other projects, and they should be compensated for both their expertise and their time. Our youth also run an annual YPAR project. Is anyone familiar with YPAR? Okay. So YPAR is a form of community-based participatory action research in which it's really a response to the traditional way that research has been done. And I'm going to go a little bit more in depth on that in the next slide. So as we stated, we are part of a very large academic institution, UC San Diego, and the unfortunate reality is a lot of times institutions such as UC San Diego and other large universities have had a bit of an exploitative relationships with communities when it comes to do research. So a lot of the time what would happen is universities would go into a community, and especially low-income communities, communities that have been de-invested in, and communities of color, they would conduct research. They would leave with some really great data. They would produce a phenomenal, publishable research paper, and that would be the end of it. And so this form of participatory-based action research is kind of a response saying, hey, we're actually going into these communities and research, but the reality is that these folks would not only benefit from some of the things, but also should be given a lot of the credit for their expertise in leading this research. So the YPAR project really allows the youth a space to first identify what in their community is working amazingly well for health and what in their community could be fixed, to visualize what would an ideal community look like, and then to craft a research question based on that. So they go through an entire process of saying, here are the assets, here are the opportunities, and here's what we want to look at because of that. From that point, the youth create a data collection tool. Our youth in the middle photo, you can see 2 of our young ladies doing some observational research at the local community farmers market, because what they wanted to see was, were farmers markets actually really addressing food insecurity in the communities where they were at. And then from that point, they use their research to actually advocate for changes and for more resources in their community. So, for instance, in the research they did on the farmers market, our youth advocated for more advertisement for the farmers market, because what they found was it was a phenomenal resource for addressing food insecurity in City Heights and similar communities. But the reality is not a lot of folks felt included in that space, and not a lot of folks were utilizing it. So yeah.
Let's shift a little bit and turn it into you. Like, can you guys share, like, why is youth engagement important? Can we have some of you share? Anyone?
I think
Hey, this is Christy.
it's important because you're able to get real buy-in from the youth, and then when you have buy-in and they have a sense of accountability, responsibility, a connection to the program, then they get intrinsic value out of that, and then we as a community get something from that to see our youth invested in their future.
Yep, yeah, that's great. And Christy, were you saying something? Thank you.
Yeah, so not only is it important to get them invested in their own future, but also engaging the youth. Usually they bring that back home and engage everyone else in the family as well. And then not only that, but at the same time, they bring in a lot of new energy and a lot of new ideas that are not immersed in, like, the business world that we are.
Great. Anyone else? Cool. We'll go to the next one. Yeah, so thanks for sharing. Yes, similarly to what we have here, benefits of youth leadership, it's a lot, right? So for the youth, what we feel is more, they feel confident making changes. They feel connected to their community. They feel like they are contributing to the community. So I remember, like, doing programming early on where we were focusing on community engagement, and the youth were specifically being very innovative and changing, comparing, like, low-income area to rich area and questioning, and what they brought into the table was so different. So they always have new ideas and something intergenerational for the society, and for specifically public health, it's innovative approaches, right? Like really it's like a new area where we can focus on youth and let them drive us and kind of sit in the back seat and really let them lead. So there's a lot of benefits on that.
Yeah, so as you can see, I think you named a lot of the benefits we see as well as the ones Amina just shared. What I will say, and I think it's going to be a big focus on the rest of our presentation today and hopefully our discussion, is that while youth leadership is important, a lot of times, it's not a one-size-fits-all, and it's not all done the best way. So has anyone ever seen this ladder before?
No.
Okay, great. Well, I'm excited to introduce it to you all today.
Maybe Sue did, right?
Well, I've seen the resident, like something like this, but I haven't seen this for youth, but I love it.
Yeah, so this is one I use all of the time, especially when I'm talking to other folks about what I mean when I say youth-led work. So this is from sociologist Roger Hart, and basically what it is it's called Hart's Ladder of Participation, and it shows really kind of this idea that there is a hierarchy here where good types of participation as well as non-participation. So on the bottom of the ladder, you can see those three items that I think all of us aim not to do in our work: tokenism, decoration, and manipulation. And the idea behind this ladder is those are three things that in any type of programming, in any type of participation, in any type of advocacy, you really want to move away from. If you're engaging youth in those bottom three rungs of the ladder, you should really take a step back and do some reevaluation. The degrees of participation, however, are the top five, and as you can see, I think that there's a varying level, assigned but uninformed, consulted and informed, adult initiated, and so on. And I think the reality is that while the top ladder is really that kind of space where you see young people initiating activities and sharing decisions with adults, and while that's the ideal, a lot of programs fall at different spaces. Our program does not always reach the top rung of the ladder, to be honest, but it's always what we're aiming for. And when we're doing any type of youth programming, what we say to ourselves in our office is, what rung of the ladder are we at? Are we really having this as a youth-initiated activity, or is this something that we're trying to put youth input in after the fact, but it's really an adult-initiated activity? So I think it's a really helpful kind of background foundation when you're thinking through the work you're doing with youth, where you're really falling and what level of participation you're really providing the youth with, and then how substantial that is. So, of course, in some instances, an adult-initiated activity makes sense, but I would argue that almost any initiative is stronger when it is youth-initiated.
Yeah, and I wanted to add into that, like, I feel like not, even us, like, we started way down somewhere, and especially when you have limited funding or funding that's almost prescribed, it's really hard to kind of change and let youth lead their own ways. So sometimes, I've been in a position where I see funding, but I'm like, this is not a good fit for us. Like, I'm not even going to apply, because honestly, it's going to put me into a position where we cannot even work with the youth and however we want it. And also, many times, you have to check in with the leadership of your organization. And because, honestly, like with me and Lizzie, we take the initiative to organize that in a sense of like saying no to so many things, because otherwise, we will be in a position where we will bring initiatives, or funding that does not fit into the youth. So sometimes, like, checking in. And also, I just wanted to say we started somewhere at the bottom and went up. So it's not overnight thing. It takes time, yeah. Yes. And moving forward into the principle of community engagement, which is the principle of community engagement is best practice of how agencies should work with communities. So that was a good transition. And it's really, when we say community, we also mean the youth get together in here. But it's something that can apply for both youth and community. And we will go through recruitment and staffing. So there's things the list is like recruitment and staffing, openness and learning, collaboration, transparency, trust, and authentic leadership. So this is a list that we go through that we will focus more on the next slides.
Yeah, thank you for that, Amina. I think when Amina and I sat down to craft what kind of message we wanted to share today, what we were really thinking through is, of course, we want to share on our program successes, but really what kind of best practices and methodologies can we provide the group that could then be easily translated back into your work. So everything we're going to discuss here is based on, as Amina said, those principles of community engagement. And the first one I would say to consider specifically when working with youth is recruitment and staffing. So the first bullet point there is keep equity in mind when recruiting. And while there's a lot of different ways you should keep equity in mind, when I'm thinking about my work with youth, what I often think about are what are the barriers to participation in my program. There can be a lot of different barriers that we may consider or we may not consider when it comes to youth. So things like the obvious ones, transportation, if your program has a cost, etc. Also meeting times, right? Is this during the school day? Where is the location? And then I think when more and more when you're thinking about equity, you have to think about your population and your youth in mind. So for instance, in where we run our program here in City Heights, we do all of our meetings in a core space that most of the youth are familiar with. And this is really because in order to make a space feel accessible to youth, it has to be a space that they feel included in. And not all spaces are created equal in mind. So what we really do is we think through what are the barriers to participation and how will the organization address these. The other element that I would mention there too is that idea of, especially if you're working with high school youth and older high school youth, competing priorities, including the need for paid employment. So like I mentioned, Amina and I have really fought to get some stipends, some modest stipend funding to give to the youth on a quarterly basis. And this idea is when I have 17-year-olds driving to meetings, they get a little kickback for gas, or they're able to really be provided with a small amount of tangible resource that can really allow them to create this space. When you're working with youth who might not have that privilege at home or some of those resources at home, it's really valuable to think through what are the barriers to participation. The other element there is really that assurance that adults are acting as adult allies. So when I say staffing, of course, if you can include equity in hiring, that's fantastic. But at minimum, with the adults you have, I think it really needs to be a conversation about how that adult works with youth, and really, are they meeting that allyship potential? And for those of you that might not really have heard that term, adult allies, before, I think this is a really helpful, quick little infographic from Youth in Focus. And it's really just a quick little assessment that you can do with your staff or you can do yourself that kind of gives you an idea of where you're falling with your adult allyship. So as you can see, it's just some simple statements like, I truly respect the ideas of youth, trusting young people, feeling knowledgeable about youth cultures, but also things like that get a little uncomfortable. Like I'm comfortable being challenged by young people. For oftentimes when working with youth, those can be a little bit trickier. So it's something I like to do with myself on an annual basis, just to kind of see where my opportunities for growth are as an adult ally, as well as where my strengths are falling. The next idea that we really want to push forward for the principles of community engagement is this idea of openness and learning. And I think when you're working with youth, and it sounds like folks have a good amount of experience here, the idea of working along adult deliverables is at best laughable. Because I think with youth, you really have to have a space where you're open to working with them in flexible ways, as well as you're open to learning from them. So what we do is we always have a plan, we have an agenda, but we make it flexible. So you built in time for discussion, you built in time for ideas, and you built in time for fluctuation. And while this can be extremely frustrating when you have a due date, I also think it's a matter of what Amina was saying earlier, where you plan a program around this idea that you're going to be responsive to what the youth bring forward. This really helps not only for the youth to feel like their time is valuable and they're, valued contributors, but it also helps with retention. So if you're having youth that aren't coming back, as gently as I can say this, it's probably a matter of programming. The other idea here is to craft and follow group guidelines. So anytime you're working with youth, I find it very helpful, first meeting, to have the youth come up with, hey, here are our principles of engagement, and this is what it's going to look like, and here's how we're going to follow through and remain respectful in that space. The last one is this idea of making meetings youth-friendly. So don't worry, I have another fantastic infographic. So if you've never considered how to make meetings more youth-friendly, it's up there on the board. Luckily, I honestly think working with youth and creating meetings for youth is the same thing as creating them for adults. No one wants to sit there and be lectured at. Ironic, I know, because I'm doing that at the moment. But really, the more you can engage the folks in your audience, the better it works, especially with young people. So I put a couple of stars next to ones I felt were important. The team builders, energizers, and icebreakers. Anytime I work with youth, we are starting and playing a game at least every hour. And it doesn't have to be long, but it really kind of helps the youth feel comfortable in that space. The other idea is just the visualizations. As much as, adults appreciate visuals, so do youth. And then that last one is really that idea of shared leadership with the youth. Okay, the next one I really want to just push forward is this idea of youth-led programming. So I've said that several times, but I wanted to take a moment just to define that. So would anyone be willing to read the definition up on the board for me?
Youth-led programs are opportunities created by individuals and organizations where youth lead planning, decision-making, facilitation, reflection, and evaluation on issues that matter to them, using actions they want to use. Though youth-adult partnerships, adults can act in supportive, engaging ways. However, youth always maintain the lead, direction, and authority.
Thank you so much. And a quick point, I know when we talk about this and that definition can seem, I think, intimidating and not applicable to certain organizations, especially depending on how you're engaging with youth. What I would argue is that there is a component of youth-led programming that can be incorporated to any initiative with youth. So they might not be leading, directing, and authorizing the entire overarching initiative, especially if you have like a youth advisory board, for instance. However, there are elements of that that can be really implemented within any type of program, with any type of decision making. And I think that this not only contributes, again, to retention of the youth, but also to really ownership over that programming. So when we're talking about collaboration with youth, I think often considering what tenets of youth-led programming can be applicable to your work would really help you meet that principle of community engagement.
Yeah, and the next principle is going to be transparency and trust. So after collaboration, we feel like, is there a trust? Is there transparency? So be honest with youth and let them know the expectations. Also, and limitations, right? Oftentimes, we sit with our youth and really provide what's really happening, what's going on. And they are oftentimes surprise us with a lot of the solutions for the problems or issues that we're facing at the moment. And present yourself with honesty. Honestly, like, you have to be honest in the relationship. To build that relationship, you have to be the one leading good examples for the youth. They are resilient. These youth are amazing. And normally, when giving time, they will share their best examples. They will share one example that I want to use is sometimes we have 2 or 3 opportunities to travel, and we cannot let all the students go at the same time. But if we share with that information, I used to remember, like, sharing, there's only 2 people who can go to Sacramento or 3 people who can present here. What do you guys think? And they decide who goes. They know who will go, and they will be like, this person is the best, this person did not get opportunity last time, instead of one of us choosing who will be going. So that is what we're talking about when we say transparency and trust. The other thing is, like, these youth we've been working with, they know that we are representing them if they're not there. So oftentimes, like, we might go to a midday meetings, or even today present on their work or something like that. But we talk to the partners and figure out how this is beneficial to them, right, to the youth. What are they getting out of it? Like, it's almost like a negotiation. I feel like we have to set up, and then that way, when we bring the program, they know that it's transparency. They know what they're getting out of it. So it's not like maybe you'll testify this project, or like maybe you will get some beneficial to your community, but it's really laying out what will happen and how are they involved and what are they doing and what is the benefit of getting. So it's not only like one way kind of thing, but it's more than 50-50, it's more for them, so on.
And the last piece we really want to touch on is this idea of authentic leadership opportunities. So as you can see, we gave some emphasis to certain items on this list. And the first thing is really just that not all opportunities are created equal. So what Amina was saying about this negotiation with different organizations stands true. A lot of times when you work with youth, especially different staff members, love that idea of having the messenger be a young, vibrant face. And that's not always the best opportunity for youth. That's not always authentic to what they would like to do, and that's not always appropriate. So really, as an adult ally, as someone working with youth, as someone leading an organization working with youth, your job is to advocate for what is best for your youth. Anytime you're working with youth or community, what we like to say is they are the bosses there. All decisions should be brought back to them, and they should be able to really decide what that is. And I think that idea of sharing and giving away power can be challenging for a lot of folks, myself included. And I think that but it leads to such strong, beautiful, collective work that's simply not possible when decisions are only made in one space. So as you can see here, there's another really great tool from Youth in Focus there, and it's a structural level analysis. So it's really taking a step back and saying, and this is really great for organizations that might not be engaging youth directly but just have certain initiatives, but how are you engaging youth, and are you doing this in a meaningful way? And these are distinct things, like if you have youth on staff, so if you're paying the staff for that the youth for their expertise that they're sharing, if young people are able to actually make decisions, if you're helping youth with organizational skills and navigating bureaucracies, because just because an initiative is youth-led doesn't mean that there's not a strong contribution from adults. Youth are still learning. They need that mentorship. And really that idea of taking the recommendations and opinions of youth participants seriously. It's not just in the 11th hour getting a stamp of approval from a young person and having them, snap a picture and state something, but it's really having their recommendations and opinions be held on par with those of the adults and the experts of an organization.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time. For us, sometimes it feels like we're going through the board, our board, right? Like we're in a meeting and we're like, let me get back to you. Let's get back to you. Right now, we cannot answer this, and it will take time. And then there's a couple of emails going back. What did the youth say, and so on. So we're really setting up a good example that we hope to share with you, and it works. But it just you have to be, persistent and really stay on that power to say we cannot do anything until they approve it.
Mm-hmm. Can you define, I'm looking at these tools. These tools look great. Like it seems like they'd be really helpful. We address adultism as a staff. Just say a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I think adultism, I've been heard defined in many different ways, so please don't take this as the end-all, be-all definition. But when we talk about adultism in our space, it's that idea that adults have the power and really should be the ones deciding because you simply don't have the life experience or perspective, and that the adult opinions and decisions matter more. And so that idea of addressing it as a staff is, I think, really connected back to that work you're doing with youth and how you're having it manifest. So it's any other type of, when you address sexism as a staff or classism or racism, adultism is another one of those types of things that require some self-reflection from both an organizational level and also, I will admit, require some buy-in from your upper team. So I wouldn't recommend necessarily starting your next staff meeting asking how adultism is playing out, but I do think it's a conversation that once you're really engaging with youth in a meaningful way is something that we should all continuously reflect on. I've had the privilege of working on a MENA's team with the Yak for almost 3 years, and it's still something I struggle with at times. So I think it's just a matter of any time you're working with youth, having that reflexive nature both individually but also as a staff and team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, before you do that, call us.
And I'm curious with that, like I could imagine maybe, I don't know, like in some of your work, if the youth have ever called you out or the staff out, like if you're doing all of this, because it's hard, right, to change a way of doing business. And, if they understand I'm going to call them the rules, so to speak, and then when stuff aren't that way, how they deal with it.
Yeah. That is an awesome question, and I will fully admit that I have been called out. I think at times being an adult ally and navigating the space of grants and scope of work and a lot of pressure from other folks and organizations, and then wanting things to move forward, right? Because we know that anytime you're doing good community or youth engagement work, it takes time and it takes relationships. And so the youth that have known me long enough and know the utilities have called out. But what's more common, I feel like, than being called out, because I think, a lot of the times these youth, you get a relationship with them and some of them are open to that, but a lot of the times too, it's a matter of like, if I look at my group and they're not engaged and they're bored and it's pulling teeth to get anything stepping forward, it's a way of knowing that like we have dropped off that rung of the ladder that we want to be on, and we're in a position now where something is going wrong.
And I can share one. I remember having under a grant that was focusing on physical activity and nutrition, healthy eating, and I was trying to do at that time. It was almost before we started the Youth Council. It was more like photo voice project, and it was like I could not focus on mental health or any other things, like anything, any other things, but those two issues. And I kept saying, this is what we need to do. And really the youth were like, why is that? Like, why do we have to do that? Can we do like something else, mental health or any other thing that's homelessness or anything that's going on with our community? Can we highlight it in a Photo Voice project? Mm-hmm. And I was like, yes, that's great, but maybe another time, right? And this is when I was learning. I was like, it was just like this. For now, this next 3 months, we have to focus on this project. And that's not how I felt, but I was in the middle of between the funder and also, the youth, and I really choose not to accept that kind of funding anymore and not to work in those spaces anymore. So, and that's the reasons why we created the Youth Advisory Council.
Mm-hmm. That's helpful. Thank you. Yeah.
Great question.
Yes, this leads into discussion. So for a while we've been talking, how do you incorporate youth and community into your work? And what opportunities or improvements do you see in those areas? This is discussion for everyone.
And also, if there's something you find a little bit you would rather speak about, we want this to kind of just be an open space for the last few minutes we have to kind of discuss thoughts, reactions, or perspectives.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, like, just making sure that the youth bond themselves and feel safe enough to share in front of each other, especially like in the middle school age. I think that's kind of a concern for me, that they'll, respect that the work that they're doing is sacred and confidential if they choose it to be, so that's kind of a little bit of my fears.
Yeah, Vanessa, absolutely. I think that's super real, especially when you're bringing in youth from different areas. Mm-hmm. One thing that we do is the first, I would say, month and a half of our programming every year, 80% of it is dedicated to team building. And those group guidelines, having the youth produce them while doing some like gentle nodding, and I have them sign them and I keep them up for every meeting, and I'm sure you do that same kind of strategies. But I will say kind of having that conversation around what does confidentiality look like and why isn't important, and really creating space for them to have fun and bond as a group is so crucial.
Yeah.
The group guidelines, maybe having group guidelines. Yeah. Do you work with them for a longer time or more than a year, or how does that work?
It's 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and in particular, I'm thinking about our peer health education club. So that's all, whoever chooses to come can fluctuate with who's there and who, So I want them to feel comfortable sharing in front of one another, and I'm working on that.
Yeah. Sometimes the beginning, when, like, let's say we work with high school. So, like, the 9th graders, when they join, they're more observation ways, like they kind of observing and kind of learning from my experience. I don't know if things change now, Lizzie. But, and then, like, later on second year, you feel like, wow, they're kind of getting in. And then third year, they're already like presenting, they're taking over, like they're really doing well. So the first year, sometimes it might be like, they're kind of getting used to the environment and kind of see what other folks are doing and so on.
Yeah, okay.
And I'll also add that if you have a group where it's like different folks for a lot of the meetings, it kind of sounds like they might drop in and drop out. Mm-hmm. Starting off by doing those group guidelines review and like providing like just 5 minutes every single meeting, it's nice repetition for youth in general. So it's something they expect and kind of a way to get them settled. Okay. And then again, I feel like I should be paid by big, icebreaker, energizer activities, because just that is such a crucial thing to creating a space. And if you can just incorporate 10 minutes of whatever time you have every meeting into that, it'll go a long way.
I like the sheet you had too, that had the idea of the check-in and the checkout. I was screenshotting that when you guys put that up. Yeah.
We're gonna follow up with an email to Sue to kind of share with what we shared, the PowerPoint and so on. It's gonna come
Great.
through, yeah.
Well, and also this seems like a good time. So, both of these lovely women, right, are available to support you. So I have a little bit of funds in a contract for follow-up TA. So for those of you that are maybe just embarking or maybe wherever you're at, you know, that might be helpful for you to be supported in that way.
Yes, we're a phone call away, or unless you're inviting us to come to see you guys. Yeah, we are available, and it's really, we worked with one team so far. It's been really good. We're available.
Awesome.
Yeah, and we're excited to get to share any of the gained experience we've gotten from working with youth and kind of what works and what we've seen is, you know, could be a little bit more difficult. I know we just have a few more minutes, but I just wanted to open it up and see if anyone else had any burning questions they'd like to go over before we close things.
Hi, this is April from Long Beach. I do have a question. We have a youth group that we work with here. We have a youth coalition that we work with year-round. And then the other thing that we do is during the summer, we have a 7-week, like a Healthy Long Beach youth leadership program where we are talking about tobacco and vaping and those kind of issues, but we're pairing it with skills-based training, like digital design, and we have someone come and do storyboarding and how do you tell your story about what you're seeing in your community and share it, and they typically kind of create PSAs at the end. I mean, one of the things we kind of go back and forth on is kind of with our recruitment. And you had mentioned that a lot of your students are from maybe kind of lower socioeconomic status or kind of these immigrant communities. And what we're finding is the youth that we're recruiting, a lot of them are very involved already. So they're already volunteering and they're already kind of doing all of these other things. And we've been struggling on how to recruit youth who maybe don't have the same resources. So I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah. First and foremost, both of those programs sound fantastic. Are you asking for recruitment for both or for the summer program specifically?
Really kind of for the summer program really is kind of the lead into the youth coalition. We were having kind of issues recruiting youth in general. And so it's kind of those youth feed into the youth coalition is how we've structured it. But yeah, the big push we do on recruitment is usually for the summer program. And our location is not, Long Beach is really big. So we were just going, we don't really have a location that is kind of central to like all kids in the city. So that might be one of the barriers when you were going through your thing that I was thinking of.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, so I think that is a big question, and we would love to set up a follow-up call potentially with you as well to kind of discuss. In short, though, I think it comes down to recruitment is such an interesting beast, and I think it's a matter both of barriers but also of like where your activities lay and what capacity looks like. A lot of our recruitment is done through Snowball, so we're lucky to have engaged youth that bring in new youth. But when we're doing active recruitment, we are very strategic with what organizations and what schools we partner with. So I think in this terms, if you're trying to maybe diversify that cohort, it would be both a matter of addressing identifying and addressing potential barriers to participation, as well as identifying and addressing kind of that asset mapping almost of partner organizations and where you might be able to reach that population. Because the nice part is I guarantee there are orgs that would have lots of great, amazing youth identified, as well as a lot of schools that would have folks that would benefit most from this type of programming. Yeah. But it's a matter of identifying and working through. And I know we're running short on time, but if April, we would love to do a follow-up call with you and break through that if you're interested. Okay.
So, yeah, we're also looking, we don't do stipends, so maybe that would also help.
Probably.
And
we'll look into that.
Stipend works, but I think there has to be something else, you know, before that. Yeah, so totally. I think location is really strong, you know, where like it's consistent about location, even if you're changing around and that kind of thing. So we'll love to go over that with you, but I'm sure there's some hope. So yeah.
Great.
Great. Yeah. So we just kind of want to finish up, and as Amina kind of alluded to earlier, we really prefer to do activities when we have the youth themselves here. So when we do have these opportunities where we are standing as representatives of our youth and the work they do, we like to bring out their voices as much as possible. So this is from a young lady who is currently training a bunch of folks in Louisiana. Her name is Noon Abdelaziz, and she is a phenomenal community leader. And her quote here is, "Youth do make a difference, and we have powerful voices. If you give us an opportunity to change our community, we are 100% down." So we want to end on Ms. Abdelaziz's words, and just thank you so much for your time and space today, and we hope to follow up if you have any questions.
And
This
our contact
awesome.
there.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, so if you can send the slides, I've recorded it, and then any other resources, and then I'll send a note out to give people your contact information. So thank you.
Yeah, that works.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, Sue. This is great. Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, ladies.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.